Why are there so many gay-coded male characters in classic melodrama? Sometimes it's about patriarchy and power, as in the excellent movie Deception. This movie is all about interpersonal control and lying, and it's brilliant. And in exploring those themes, it reveals fascinating things about gender and relationship dynamics.
Extraordinary, isn't it? That music can exist in the same world as the basest treachery and ingratitude.
But also racial and economic dynamics as well. This movie has Bette Davis as a somewhat talented piano player, Paul Henreid as her very talented cellist boyfriend, and Claude Rains as her famous composer ex. It takes place right after World War II. Davis and Henreid had been separated during the war since he was European, so she shacked up with Claude Rains for money and security. But now that the war is over, she meets Paul Henreid again, and he wants to start things back up. Davis and Henreid had made a promise to each other before the war to stay loyal, but Davis didn't keep to it as she had to survive. Henreid sees her incredibly furnished apartment and suspects that she must have had a lover. And here's where the title comes in. Davis starts lying to Henreid about what happened during the war, saying that, oh, she took on some piano students from wealthy families, and that's how she got all of this. So they get married, and at the wedding reception, the most powerful gay man that you've ever seen enters dramatically.
A party, indeed.
How did you get here so quickly?
Quickly? I have the impression I'm too late. That object, I presume, is a wedding cake? Champagne? Oh, very fitting. I infer a husband. Make me acquainted with him.
I love Claude Rains so much. And here's where the movie gets fascinating. This is a very gay-coded man, right? So like, why is he so upset at Bette Davis getting married that he shatters a glass by squeezing it?
Like all women, white as a sheet at the sight of a couple of scratches. Calm and smiling like a hospital nurse in the presence of a mortal wound. Good night.
Well, to me, it's about power over women being available as a currency to both straight and gay men, so Claude Rains wants it. This movie, I think, is one of several of the era that shows how patriarchy works specifically through gender dynamics and not just sexual dynamics. Like, if you're a dude in a relationship with a woman in the 1940s, what do you quote-unquote get? Well, it's the only outlet that you have for a socially acceptable, long-term, emotionally intimate companion, yes. But also, to be very crass, you get someone that you have physical, legal, and societal control over. There's effectively no prosecution for intimate partner assault or violence. She didn't have medical autonomy. She didn't have legal recourse. She didn't have social recourse, and so on. Like, to be blunt, as the final object for a household, she's a valuable asset. So even though it feels like Rains has very little use for her carnally, she is still incredibly valuable to him, both if you look at it cynically and credulously. Credulously, he's losing his companion and friend. But cynically, under the gender relations of the time, he's losing control of arguably his most valuable piece of property from his perspective. You can see this dynamic explored brilliantly by George Sanders' character in All About Eve as well. In that movie, he's a gay-coded theater critic whose motivation is explicitly control over Anne Baxter. It's a brutal ending for Baxter as he figures out her plot, blackmails her, and tells her that she belongs to him now. And this movie is genius too because it tells that story very brilliantly via written dialogue that is almost entirely lying, subtext, and complicated emotional swordplay. It shows Paul Henreid as a stock melodrama character of coolish straight guy. He's a doofus in this, completely out of his league trying to emotionally battle against Bette Davis and especially Claude Rains. The key thing that he doesn't understand is this power of control that Claude Rains wants. Henreid is jealous purely on a carnal level. His worst fear is that Davis was giving herself over to Rains in bed. But Davis herself is as afraid of Rains as she is of like Dracula or something because of the emotional power he has to control people, but she knows that Henreid just won't understand what that actually means, which means that Henreid himself gets trapped in Rains' power, but for him it's artistic and economic control. Again, so brilliant because Henreid wants to be able to make a career out of being a cellist and Rains is a famous composer, so Rains spends the movie tormenting him intentionally and drawing him into his web. When Henreid goes to confront Rains and find out more, like the way a couple of dumb straight guys would have a fist fight over a woman or something, Rains tells Henreid that he's a really good cellist and that Henreid should play his concerto, which Henreid immediately jumps at because it's brilliant and will make him a big star. And so of course he's confused when he gets back to Davis and she's like, "You met with him alone?" And then she gets even more horrified when Henreid tells her that he's going to be the star of Rains' new concerto. Davis knows that Rains is drawing him in and putting him in his control as well to get her back. And so now he has both of them, and the rest of the movie is him tormenting both of them, making Davis think that he's going to replace Henreid in the concerto at the last second and ruin Henreid's confidence forever, or taking him to a long, elaborate dinner right before rehearsal so that Henreid gets nervous and plays badly in front of people, or telling Davis that he could at any moment tell Henreid exactly what happened during the war, which Davis has still been lying about. In addition to exploring gender and economic control though, this movie I think has also a highly explicit critique of racial dynamics, and it does this via set design, casting, and, well, a cat, like a pet. So Claude Rains has a manservant played by the great Benson Fong, and to be honest, it's strange for the era that they cast a non-white person in general for a relatively prominent role, and that he's not a stereotype, but they use him to further communicate how Claude Rains views people. And being of this time, he views minorities as assets for his control just as much as he does women. The apartment that Bette Davis has was bought and furnished by Claude Rains, and notably, he stocks that apartment with tons of Asian art and like sculptures of Asian heads in particular. And early in the movie, actually, one of those heads, which is the base of a lamp, drives Paul Henreid crazy because on the surface he knows how expensive it must be. But I think the movie is making a deeper and more incisive criticism of social relations here. The metaphor is again, I think, about control and being an asset. Claude Rains views his art, his servant, and Davis in all the same way, as objects to adorn a house. And so even his cat is a Siamese cat, which I personally think is entirely intentional, as later in the movie they show Rains exhibiting a type of control over Benson Fong's relationship too, as Rains tells Davis that he knows about Fong's relationships despite Fong trying to be discreet about them.
Excuse me, sir. I've laid out your dress code in your room, and your other things are in the hall, sir.
Yeah, that's all right, Jimmy. You can stay out as late as you please.
If it's really all right, sir. Thank you, sir. Good night, sir. Good night, ma'am.
Good night, Jimmy.
He has a lady friend, slightly furtive about it. Extraordinary, isn't it, how people try to keep their little secrets, which can never be kept. But of course you think they can, don't you? Well, we'll find out.
And so how fascinating, right? Obviously, if Rains' character is gay, he didn't have the easiest time in the world back then by any means. But he's still a man, which means he still has access to this power and economic control over women, and so he wants to get it. And he's still white, so he still gets to express economic control over a minority. And he's still rich, so he expresses control over someone more economically precarious than him. And so even though the movie takes care to show him hurt by losing Betty Davis as like a friend and long-term companion, which does suck, and which he also can't be wholly open about, of course, it doesn't spare him from reinforcing gender and racial and economic supremacy as a rich white man.